I really want to get to my guest, Nicole Zedeck, who is from Colorado, but is currently serving as an international correspondent for I-24 News, which is a station I've actually gone on a number of times. She has been reporting from the front lines of the war in the state of Israel. Nicole, thank you for coming on.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Michael.
So what have you seen?
That's a loaded question. We're entering the 7th day of the war here in Israel. Currently, I'm talking to you from Tel Aviv in central Israel, and I just left my bomb shelter, my secure place, within the past 5 minutes because central Israel, within the past 5 minutes, was just under attack. A reported hit in Rehovot, about 12 miles away from me, hit a residential building there. So even here in central Israel, residents continue to live in fear, running to their bomb shelter at a moment's notice. But on the ground in southern Israel, about 30 to 40 miles south of here, so still not too far. You have to remember Israel's such a small country. That's where it's really, we are seeing these horrific incidents reporting on the ground there. There's constantly being fired rockets from the Gaza Strip and Hamas. You have about 10 seconds to get to a bomb shelter, get to a safe place. If you are not near a bomb shelter or a safe place, you have to quickly stop the car as quick as you can, lay on the ground, hope you can get to a trench and just put your hands behind your head and hope that no shrapnel or no direct hits comes near you. Now, that's everything that's happening in the air overhead, but what's also happening on the ground 7 days later, and there's still the possibility that Hamas terrorists are still in the area following the initial infiltration on Saturday. We're now learning more numbers about exactly how many Hamas terrorists were able to get into Israel. It's more than 2,500. Now, many of them still in the area. The atrocities that they committed. I was in one of the most southern kibbutz communities, Kfar Aza, just a few days ago, the first day that any journalists were allowed to enter that area. In fact, mere hours before we were allowed to enter the area, there was still ongoing fighting between Israeli soldiers and Hamas terrorists. But as soon as they could secure the area as best they could, they wanted us in there to see exactly what's happening. And this is just one of the many scenes of a massacre, Michael. Bodies were still lining the community. Israeli bodies that the Israeli military was rushing to cover up as we were walking through. Now, that doesn't count the dozens of Hamas terrorist bodies that also lie in these former playgrounds, former children's areas. I saw a child's crib that was pulled out through the front door. It was sitting in the entrance, thrown to its side, splattered in blood, a child's toy still inside. Unspeakable acts. And when you hear from the Israeli soldiers who were first to arrive at the scene, I spoke to one of the deputy commanders who led the troops in there on Saturday to fight the Hamas terrorists who had infiltrated this community. And he said the scenes that he encountered, not only while you're still fighting these terrorists, these armed, whether they're armed with guns, knives, grenades, they're also walking through, seeing mothers, children, babies decapitated, mutilated, handcuffed, and burned alive. It's unthinkable acts, the fact that I'm hearing this and I'm having to repeat these acts, but the world needs to know what exactly is happening. So a lot to unpack. And unfortunately, it just is all continuing, Michael.
So there's been a lot of discussion over, and probably this is the first war ever where this has been an issue, where this has been such a full issue. There's been a lot of discussion over what can we believe. Obviously, there's always war propaganda. There are always fake reports and fake pictures and things like that. But just to use the horrific example you described, we saw initial reports that the Hamas terrorists are killing babies and beheading them and burning them and doing all sorts of things. Then we heard that these reports were not confirmed because there were no pictures. Then we saw some pictures of it. Then we saw a report that the pictures were fake. The pictures were from artificial intelligence. Then we saw a report that they weren't actually from artificial intelligence. And especially in an age of Midjourney and ChatGPT and artificial images that can be rendered in 60 seconds, how do you as a journalist, and then how do we as the news watchers around the world separate fact from fiction?
It's so interesting, Michael, because as a journalist, it makes it difficult because you have to trust eyewitness sources along with these images and photos that we are taking live. There's live coverage. I was reporting from there, not pre-recorded. Our station was taking it all live. So that, along with the eyewitness testimony from soldiers and first responders who were there, if I was reporting anywhere else in the world, we have to remember I'm a journalist. I moved to Israel 8 months ago to cover what's happening on the ground here in Israel and the Middle East. If I was in Ukraine right now and people were hearing these atrocities that were happening to citizens, if I was in my home in the United States talking to American soldiers who were witnessing and relaying what they witnessed when they arrived to the scene of a massacre, along with the footage that confirms their stories, would anyone be debating this? Would anyone be doubting this? The answer is no. The answer, this is only happening because we're talking to Israeli soldiers and this is happening in Israel. That's what the debate all circles around. So as a journalist, it is difficult, but all we can do is continue to tell the facts, continue to speak to our reliable sources, and show the footages and the images and those live reports. I think that's all we can do is give the facts.
What is the situation in terms of your own safety? I mean, obviously, there's just chaos everywhere. As you say, 2,500 Hamas militants still running around wreaking havoc in the state of Israel. So have journalists been killed yet? Are you safe?
I want to clarify, 2,500 militants or terrorists not still running around in Israel. That's the reports of how many were able to infiltrate on Saturday.
Got it.
Now, already IDF has confirmed they found 1,500 terrorist bodies. However, many were able to then return back to Gaza versus how many are still remain in Israel. That remains unknown. So as far as our safety, when I'm reporting down there, driving from live to live hit, I was stopped once by the Israeli military. Actually, we got a flat tire as we were driving through there. And so as we were changing the tire, as rockets continue to fly overhead, some of these Israeli soldiers stop next to us and they say, "We just want to make sure, you're in an active military zone right now. We are currently trying to secure the area from terrorists. We know they're nearby. We're looking for them. Are you armed? And if you're not armed, you should be with someone who is armed. Stay with us if that's the case." As a journalist, I don't have a license to carry. It's very difficult to get a license to carry in Israel.
Yeah.
So the fact that the Israeli military is asking us if we are armed and telling us that we should be, I think that shows how dangerous it is. Now, luckily, unfortunately, we are in day 7 and they are continuing to secure the border, I think as far as journalist safety, it might be better on that front as far as no active terrorists running around with guns, knives, grenades. However, you continue to live with the threat of the rockets that could become stronger, especially if the northern border and Hezbollah and Iranian proxies continue to get involved in this war as they continue to threaten to do.
So you've got the expansion of the war now. Obviously, Hezbollah from southern Lebanon has come in from the north of Israel. Israel has responded. Israel then hit the airport in Damascus in Syria a day ahead of the Iran foreign minister's visit there. You've got the former head of Hamas calling for a day of jihad, a global day of jihad, specifically focused on the West on Friday the 13th, not the most auspicious of days. So from your perspective on the ground, how likely is it that this war expands, and how much will it expand?
I think that's what everyone is waiting to see right now. We know that the initial message that Israel wants to send is dedicated and targeted towards the south. And they say Hamas will no longer exist after this. In fact, as we talk, Israel has urged more than 1 million Gazans and Palestinians in the Gaza Strip to flee the northern part of the country, to evacuate out of Gaza City, because they say in the next 24 hours, we're going to continue to strike and continue to really increase these efforts. Now, as the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, is telling these Gazans, 1 million, flee, we're coming. Hamas is telling them, no, stay. They're continuing to contradict that message, and that's because that's the best safety net that they have. They're hoping they can continue to use these human shields, truly. And it's interesting. And now another aspect that's going to make this situation so much more difficult is the hostage situation. Right. We know now at least 120 confirmed hostages. That's according to this morning from the Israeli defense spokesperson. And that number, some speculate it could be dozens more. So we know, at least as Hamas is trying to urge its citizens to stay as human shields, it has to be assumed that they're absolutely using Israeli citizens as human shields.
Right.
So the hostage situation, which we still don't have too much information about, I think that's the most critical aspect of this, as Israel is upping its efforts, and we're going to see an invasion from the ground.
On the potential hostages and on separating truth from fiction, we initially saw this German tattoo artist, Shawnee Loki, I think I'm probably mispronouncing that, paraded through the streets by Hamas. Everyone assumed that she was dead. Then we're hearing reports that no, she's actually alive, but there's no confirmation of that either. So even when it comes to the hostages, how confident is the state of Israel that they know who the hostages are, how many there are, how many have already been killed, and how can we, trying to observe the situation, try to discern that?
I think that's a great question, and I wish I had more information, but Israel is being pretty tight-lipped about it, understandably, because they don't want to let their cards loose. And so as Israeli citizens, Israeli family members, they're trying to give their best faith to the government. The government says that they've contacted at least 120 family members, or 120 people who have family in Israel as far as that hostage situation. The United States also saying that they're getting involved and they're trying to work out some sort of negotiation to free these hostages. But as far as what you can believe and what you can't believe, I know you can believe, as of this morning, there's at least 120 hostages. I know you can believe that Israel is working and doing everything that they can to try and get them out. And I know that you can believe Hamas terrorists are likely raping them, likely doing horrific acts to them. We know that even filming many of these atrocious acts that they're committing. So it's truly a horrible situation. We heard from there's one person who spoke out about their daughter who was recently killed, and they found out that she was murdered rather than taken hostage. And he broke down in relief.
Yeah.
Because he said, I'm so much happier of the two options to know that she's dead rather than alive, but with Hamas terrorists. So right. It's a terrible situation that's happening and really complicates the war efforts.
In terms of retrieving the hostages, are there other nations on the ground here? I mean, specifically the United States. We know that there are a number of American hostages there. I have to imagine the U.S. has some kind of special forces in there trying to get them. But has there been any word on the street about other foreign actors?
There's absolutely no word on the street. I mean, all we know as of today is that the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, just held a press conference with the Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, discussing more of these efforts. But those discussions are behind closed doors. They come out to the press and they show a united front. And you have to assume that they're working on doing everything behind closed doors to get this out. As I said, keeping their cards to themselves because they don't want any more information to get out. But it's hard for the families, especially, and the friends to have faith when they know little information. Right. 7 days later, this is going on longer than I think many people had expected.
Right. Nicole, got to leave it there. I'm sure you're extremely busy. Stay safe. We will be praying for you. Thank you for coming on the show. And if you want more of Nicole's coverage, go check out I-24 News. Thank you very much. Boy, what a great clip that was. Now, hey, ring that bell. Subscribe to the Michael Knowles YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.